I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian here. We're approaching the end of the month of January, and I thought it'd be a good time to do an update on Solar Cycle 24. This particular solar cycle began over 4 years ago. It's a weak cycle. It actually is underperforming in terms of the predictions for the sunspot activity. It's been rather quiet over the last several days and looks rather quiet over the next few days, despite the fact that it's expected to reach a solar maximum later this year. The prior predictions were for a solar maximum for this particular cycle to occur right around the fall of this year. However, there is now a growing sentiment in the solar scientist community that perhaps the solar maximum has already been reached, and we'll talk about that over the next few minutes. That's all because of the given the quiet nature of the sun in recent days. Let's take a look at the latest image of the sun. There are a couple of sunspots visible right now. This one right here and a second one right here. And in fact, they are directly facing the Earth. We're kind of in the line of fire right now. However, they have shown no signs of activity in terms of solar flares or coronal mass ejections. So the probability or the expectation is that things will remain quiet over the next few days. There is another sunspot region just now starting to appear on the edge of the sun. That will rotate towards the middle part of the sun facing the Earth over the next several days, and we'll continue to monitor that. But the bottom line is it's been rather quiet on the sun. This continues a trend of weaker and weaker sunspot cycles. This cycle is weaker than the previous cycle. That cycle was weaker than the prior one before that, and this continuing trend looks like it may continue into the next cycle. There was already some solar scientists predicting that the next cycle, Solar Cycle 25, will be even weaker than this current cycle. Well, here's a good figure to kind of compare the weakness of this cycle compared to the prior cycle. And indeed, here we are right now where the very latest sunspot reading sunspot number is approximately 52. That puts us right in this region, right about in here right now. And notice how the trend is definitely weaker from the prior one. The prior one peaked in around the year 2000. And this looks like this will be drawn out and maybe extended all the way to the end of the decade here, perhaps 2019, 2020 or so. And that's important because there are some research studies that show not only does the strength of the solar cycle have an impact perhaps on global temperatures, but the length of the solar cycle does as well. In fact, weaker solar cycles tend to be longer, and the combination of weak solar cycle and the longer solar cycle, some research indicates, could promote some cooling in terms of global temperatures. So we'll of course monitor that over the next several days, months, and years. Now here's a map of the predicted level of sunspot numbers for this particular solar cycle. Again, we're right in this region right here, below the expectations that the earlier predictions by solar scientists were maybe a fall off like this, reaching a maximum somewhere around the mid to latter part of 2013. Here's 2013 right here. There's now a little bit of a growing sentiment in the solar scientist community that maybe the peak was reached right here. There was kind of a jump in sunspot numbers way back at the end of 2011, but given the quietness on the sun right now and the way it's been looking in the past couple of weeks and perhaps the next couple of weeks, there's a growing belief that maybe the peak has been reached. Again, the official word is that the solar maximum should occur late this year, and we'll of course continue to monitor that as the months progress. Well, here's another way to look back at the weakness of this cycle compared to the prior couple of cycles. This shows some cycles going all the way back right here to about 1950. Notice the trend here. Again, it's weaker and weaker and weaker. We're right here. This is Solar Cycle 24. This is weaker than the prior cycle, which was weaker than the one before that. All the way back to 1990, that particular cycle peaked in 1990. And again, there are some predictions that the next solar cycle, perhaps in the decade of the 2020s, Solar Cycle 25, will be even weaker than this one. And again, there is some research that indicates that weak solar cycles and extended solar cycles tend to promote some global cooling. And you combine that with the fact that the Pacific Ocean has slipped into a cold phase, and it makes very interesting possibilities out there for a cooling trend here over the next several years. This is 5, 10, 15 years away we're talking about here. So we'll continue to monitor the situation here. Right now the sun is rather quiet. despite the fact that it's supposed to reach a maximum later this year, and that thinking may be changed over the next several months. That's it for now. The SIweather.com. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.